You can say good morning now.
Good morning, Councillor Bermansky. There's Councillor Jolly. Sam, I just was going to say good morning and see how all this.
Can you hear us?
No, Don, with you being retired, you're probably not used to saying good morning much unless it's 12:01.
I usually say good day. No, I say good day.
Oh, I see. Okay, we're starting to have some people joining us. So
All right.
have a go. Still no
Thanks, Don.
directors.
See you later.
Camera should pick us up.
Okay, here's.
I want to know which one of you guys ratted me out. She said, I heard you were bad mouthing me on Métis Crossing. And I said,
Don?
I didn't bad mouth you, Don. I said, you were the office queen. I said,
Oh, no, it wasn't me.
And there she's back.
I said, the office queen is back. But I did share the picture that
I was gonna say that. You shared.
she's still here. Yeah, I shared the picture. But she took it.
That's right. If you pose for pictures, you.
It's getting Dean, Paul.
I'm letting people. Tim, who's Tim?
Engineering,
Okay.
capital projects.
Okay.
Now it's getting busy. Everybody waited until 11.
It was pretty. Well, it was
Unbelievable, eh?
It went well. It went well. It was a long day. We were there at 10:30 in the morning. We didn't get
All came to your party, Daria.
4 or 4. It was a long.
I don't know about, this is not
But you know what? We kept it light.
Days I just feel really
Like Dad asked.
to your party.
I lost it once.
Hell's going on. Those are the types of things, honestly, you just need.
Participants, maybe Councillor Jolie, if you can say hello to us, just to make sure that we have a sound from your end.
Hi, Daria.
Hey, we can hear you. We're just Councillor Brock. That is not
He's
it.
only 15 minutes late.
Okay,
Got some drive time issues.
okay. So should we get started?
Give him a better cell phone package so he could drive and have us on.
Yeah.
That sounds dangerous.
Okay. So I'm just gonna share screen and then we can, oh, yes. Okay. Then we're gonna get started. So I think we have everybody here, so we can get our meeting started. So today's workshop will be on the service and service level inventory. John and I will co-present today. Just to quickly provide an overview of the agenda, we will provide a background on our practice related to service and service level inventory. We will share methodology that we use for this practice. We will also provide a high-level overview of the consolidated inventory and also talk a little bit and take any questions, I should say, that council may have. I do want to point out that we have our leadership team and some of our senior managers and managers online, and they can help answer any questions that council may have. So this is really good opportunity to get some of the answers related to service and service levels. We will talk a little bit about how changes are made and how inventory is updated, and then what next steps involve for us. So just to provide quick reminders, so service and service level inventory is a big part of our framework. And as you know, the purpose of this framework is to align our strategic and business plans and departments plans, as well as service and service level inventory to ensure that our plans and budget reflect those services and service levels approved by council for community. And then we continuously review and improve programs and services delivered to community and use that information to feed back into our department plans so that those actions can continue to optimize services to community. So just to provide a little bit of a background related to our inventory, and for our returning council members, this will be a bit of a repeat information, but we thought it's important to provide the background so that we have mutual understanding of how this came to be and why do we have service and service level inventory. So we started this practice in 2014, and the problem that we were trying to solve at the time was that we really didn't have documented information about services and associated service levels delivered to community. So we also didn't have a good understanding of those services and service levels, or documented, I should say, that support and enable delivery of services to community. So those internal services. We couldn't show how that information was pulled together into proposed budget. And as you know, about 86% of our proposed budget that we present to council is to support delivery of programs and services to community. So, to say that proposed budget was developed to maintain those services and service levels at the time, we couldn't show what we mean by that. So capturing that information was very important. And we also had the opportunity and needed to increase the understanding that adding services and increasing service levels results in sometimes need for additional budget and additional resources. So we really needed to build a stronger practice related to that relationship. So if we're doing more of something or more frequently, it does cost us at times more money. Like we're not able always to do it with existing resources, both budget and people. So we really needed to improve that. So what did we do? So we introduced the service and service level inventory. So this was really a way to document and provide information both to community as a whole and the council as to what are those services that we provide to community and how do we provide them. So what is our promise to community, not just from the service perspective, but also from the service level. what can they expect to receive from us? So we documented 2 inventories. One is an external inventory, so the one that council will see today, but we also have internal inventory that provides information related to those supporting and enabling services that are very important to delivery of services to community as well. How do we use this inventory? As we were introducing this practice, we also, with council direction, included the inventory in a number of council policies. And this kind of provides a quick overview of those policies. So for strategic framework, the inventory provides details related to service delivery and optimization. So that's documented in the strategic framework council policy, as well as program and service review policy. So program and service review policy requires administration to continuously review and improve services delivered to community. We also use it as a basis for developing proposed budget, as I mentioned, and that's documented in budget and taxation guiding principle policy. So according to this policy, we are to bring forward proposed budget to maintain existing services and service levels. And we also use service information for PBB. So that's priority-based planning and budgeting that we presented a workshop on just a couple of weeks ago. So this information is used to cost out those services and give us really good understanding of, okay, how much, what's the cost associated for each of those services. So with implementation of this practice, we were really able to increase awareness of the link between services and service levels and budget resources. We certainly have some more work to do in this area, but we started to have those conversations. If we're adding new service, what does that mean? Like, do we have resources that can deliver those? Do we have budget that's required? As well as if we're looking at reducing the cost and reducing a tax impact, just to making that connection between, okay, we need to look at service and service level adjustments. So you were probably able to see that last year with proposed budget with some adjustments recommended. And then we were really able to increase organizational awareness of services delivered to community and identify synergies between departments. So we've been able to have some really good conversations that will, as we continue, really help us to continue to improve efficiencies and delivery of services to community.
So Daria.
Yes.
Question with service levels, and we're linked to priority-based budgeting, and each one of the service levels, we must know some dollar value associated with them because we've said that they roll up in total to about 86% of the total budget. So we would actually have line of sight between, for example, cemetery management and the service level that says it's worth $100,000 or something like that. And in reverse, when my motion around cutting grass, it actually said, we're
I'm aware of that.
I'm going to regret that. I'm going to be out there picking then. I could take my portable
Community delivery.
But so in reverse, we would have that full circular tie from service level to budget to savings to.
That's right. We have that information. So PBB gives us a tool that helps us capture services that we deliver to community and then associated costs. What it doesn't do right now, it just doesn't show service levels, but we have that information. So until we update PBB for this time around, the way that we can provide that cost information is just our finance team has it and our directors have that information so they can, show information related to cemetery. This is the service, this is the current service level, and this is how much it costs the city to deliver that service.
Okay.
And they can also provide insight into what changes may look like and implementation, right? Because often changes are not immediate, right? It takes time to implement to actually realize whatever change we're hoping to.
Sure. Okay.
To help?
Yep.
Okay, so just to carry on here, and thank you for your questions. So please, everybody else, just jump in if you have questions. If not, we will have opportunity for questions as well. So we do want to share with you a little bit about methodology because, we think that's also important so that council knows that, we are using a pretty recognized reference model that's used by municipalities across Canada. And also it's used by Government of Canada. And it's really to help describe the business of government. And it helps generate insights that really help governments improve. So it is a common framework. It's a common language that we're using, and also common definitions that you were probably able to see in the inventory. The main point of the framework is really to look at the services from outside in perspective. So not what we do and what we provide, but it's to take that perspective of a resident. What do I get? So we try to show services from that perspective. So that's why, you're not going to see in there, this is what we do to deliver the service. It's more like, what is that final output to community that community gets? So it's a client-centric view. And we also show how each service contributes to achievement of defined program outcomes. So, the program areas that you see in the inventory, each of those are there for, a goal. Like there is a goal that we're trying to achieve in our community, and that municipalities have as a role to provide, from, social services to, public operations. Like what are we trying to achieve with each of those programs, and then how each service contributes to achievement of those program objectives. So the consistent framework really helps government determine if we're doing the right things. So are we investing dollars and delivering services that make a difference? And it also gives us information related to, hey, maybe we achieved the objective that we're trying to achieve in this particular program area. Let's focus on the one that maybe we haven't yet. And it also helps us benchmark with other municipalities. As we have more and more municipalities use this practice in the region, it will really help us do some benchmarking, and it can help inform decisions. And also, we use it as a foundation for performance measures. So ideally, we would have performance measures for each of the programs to give us that insight. Like, how are we doing? Are we achieving desired and what adjustments, if any, do we need to make? So we're working towards that to have more of those program-specific measures and service-specific measures. So this is really good foundation for that. So this is kind of visual of a municipal reference model for municipal government. So as you can see on this visual, so council provides governance related to what programs we need to provide as an administration to community, and those programs are accomplished through delivery of a number of different services. So that is the outcome and impact that residents receive, and it's the value really that residents receive for their tax dollars and services that they get from municipal government. On the administration side, there is a lot of work that goes into delivering services. So it starts with resources. So administration has the authority of assigning resources. But as you know, we do require council input if we're required to add, like new resources to support service delivery. We're responsible for processes, so we spend quite a bit of time making sure that those processes are as efficient as possible and streamlined. And it's those processes that then deliver services to community, and we're accountable for delivery of those services to community. And it's those programs then that also add value to our community and our final output. So that's a visual of municipal reference model. Okay, whoops, sorry. I just quickly wanted to provide an overview of different definitions that I use that you probably saw in the inventory. So program is a group of services that address one of the primary purposes of local government. And it's really a mandate to achieve outcomes by delivering services. So the sub-program is just a way to further specialize a target group and need addressed by a parent program. So it's just to provide a bit more details related to a program area. And then service is really that defined as it's a defined commitment to deliver outputs that contribute to program outcomes. And it's based on a definition of outcome. What this really means is that a service delivers an output that meets the needs of a client group or a target. Sorry, I'm just going to move. Subservice provides a little bit more detail behind the service. So again, it can further specialize a service by audience or service output. So it's just a next level of detail. And then service level is really that statement that tells client what level, and it's usually measurable. So we really try to focus on making it measurable. So what level of service they are receiving. And it's really our promise to our residents. So, how often we're gonna do snow removal, grass cutting, as you use as an example, what events we have in the community. So it's really that promise that we give to our residents as to what they can expect to receive from.
Sorry, can I ask a question there?
Sure.
Just in relation to that last around service level and then how we are in measurable terms, where does that show up more to what Councillor Killick was asking? I mean, we have some of the tie-in to PBB, but where, for example, would the kind of the throughputs or some of the outputs be measured? So for example, just using one, and I don't want to go through them all, I mean, but for example, access to quilting, multi-craft, pottery, when we're talking about the visual art studios that are within St. Albert Place, do we capture, I mean, because that's a sub-client, I mean, it's a client, how do we capture that in a measurable term? Do we, like, what method would we use for that?
Right now, like a lot of our operational departments, they do capture that information. We're working towards having a more solid practice that makes those measures visible.
Yeah.
So if you remember, we have Star Tracker. So it's our dashboard online. So we're in the process of updating that. So as we continue to work with the organization to have that service measures, to have program measures, you will start to see more and more of that. But for now, a lot of departments do keep track of attendance and some of those other.
Yeah, and is the intent then is to put them within this document then, or would they have more of a reference to, like, I mean, let's say Arden, like you say, services and fees in alignment with a council policy, municipal fees and charges, but that doesn't tell me how many people used it or how many events were there or that type of.
Yeah.
So is it just direct us to another document then, or another internal measuring tool, or how?
Stat Tracker, which is already online. So we're working towards aligning our Stat Tracker with this inventory. So the inventory stops with what's the promise that we made. And then reporting piece is how are we doing against that promise that we made? So we're hoping to use Stat Tracker for that, which is then more visible. It's more user friendly. It's a dashboard.
Okay. I mean, just for me, that would give me more information. I mean, not to get into the weeds or not to get into operational decisions, but where would it, if we're going to get down to service level, and if we're using it to make potentially decisions or to increase our services or whatever, I need to know if we're being steered somewhere to access that, or if more particularly if administration is looking at that.
It's a very good question. And I can tell you that departments are using that information right now. We just have to make it available and visible. And we're hoping to use Stat Tracker for that because our community is already aware of that a little bit. And it may be different level of detail. So we have to work through our performance measurement practice to see, okay, at what level of detail do we share as internal, operational decision-making, and then what level of detail we can share with community. But really, it's very good information to have out there so that people can see, changes they're making. Progress on delivery of some of these services. You will see some of those stats in our annual report as well.
Yeah.
But it is one of our practices that we're working on maturing.
Well, even as I went through, and I don't want to get bogged down on this, and I apologize, but even as I was working down through the individual service levels, it seems like there's more detail for some of the, services that we provide around the service level. And then there's kind of a reference to a policy or something along that line in others. So, that's where I was kind of asking the question, are we getting same information across, or are we being directed somewhere? And that's all I was looking for, because I mean, for me, it would help feed what kind of levels is a higher level of services that we could access. I mean, again, I don't want to get into the operations. I don't want to start doing that, but I want to, it might form a decision as to whether or not we discontinue a service because it's just not being utilized or accessed.
Yeah, and those are really, really good questions. And it's one, as I mentioned, it's a practice that we are working on maturing, providing the actual performance of each of the services. And that's not the intent of the inventory. And the reason, and maybe that's a question for council, but the reason that we refer to policy is because for some services, council does have a policy in place. But if you look at that policy, there's so much detail that adding that detail to this inventory would kind of duplicate it, and it would also make this document even longer. So that's why we're kind of referring to inventory. And also, if council decides to change the policy, we don't necessarily need to go back to another document to make those adjustments.
Well, and that kind of feeds into what we were talking about is planning with Councillor Jolly's comments around maybe redoing some of the policies or refreshing policies and making them, how are they aligned, and what part of a council of policy is actually an operational, administrative, instead of having a higher level policy.
Exactly.
And shrinking that a little bit.
Absolutely.
There you go, Nat, I got it in.
There you go.
I don't know if I said that in public, but yeah, good call.
And I think we also
Had to point that out.
council orientation. How can council make decisions related to services and service levels? And that's how. It's through those policies, and it's through service and service level inventory, because we use that information to determine how, like, resources that we require and budget that we require. So that's the level through policies, and including the budget and taxation guiding principle policy, which includes this as an attachment. That was a very good question. I love the question about performance measures. Okay. And then, just to wrap up, the process is really the work required to achieve the service level. So I know that sometimes we can simplify how we show services, but a lot of work and a lot of different activities and processes go into delivering that service to community. And that's really important to recognize as well. So to talk a little bit about what we did in 2022. So when we were, we introduced the inventory, and then when we were implementing the priority-based planning and budgeting, it required a different level of information. So to ensure that we can introduce that practice to City of St. Albert, we ended up creating another version of this inventory. And really, I mean, we needed to do it at the time, but it's not ideal. So we took time to consolidate those two inventories into one that will provide a different level of detail for each of our needs. So now we can use this inventory both for the conversations with council related to service and service level in general, but also have information that we require for PBB, and we can make it consistent so that they're not two different versions. It's the same information. So that one inventory with multi-layers, we will be using it as a basis for development of proposed budget to maintain council-approved services and service levels. And, we'll also use that same information to better understand alignment of services to establish results in PBB and cost of services delivered to community. So the other thing that we did with the inventory that you reviewed is we created further alignment to municipal reference model. First time we were learning, we were experiencing this practice for the first time, and it was something new for our organization. So as we used it for the last couple of years, we were able to have some really good conversations, and we were able to really create that stronger focus on programs and services that contribute to each of the programs, rather than having services listed per departments, like, what department delivers each service. Because really that's the alignment across the organization that we're trying to achieve. To deliver a service, it requires many different departments. So, we may have a service as a community event, but to deliver community event, we have engineering that take care of roads and they make sure that we have proper access. We have our municipal enforcement and our CMP present so that they can make sure that everything is taken care of. Public operations make sure that garbage is planned for, like with garbage cans and everything that's needed. We have communications that communicates to community what's happening and what event is taking place, and so on and so on. So we really wanted to make sure that we're capturing that overall service information rather than information related to each department. And then we also try to incorporate lessons learned, not just internally, but from council. Like council did provide some feedback related to the level of detail. So we try to incorporate that and also related to what decisions council makes, because sometimes, if a service level is a standard, and you will see this mostly in fire services, we can't really change fire service standards. So it may not be a council approved service level, but it's just council accepted the level that we follow. Okay, so how do we use this inventory? So we do use it as a tool and it's used throughout the year. So it really helps us show the value we provide to community. It helps us facilitate strategic conversations for service delivery and budget. And we use it during department mid-range business planning process where departments look at services that they provide and consider any improvements that they need to make or actions that they need to take to deliver those services to community. As I mentioned, service information is used for PBB for further insight to inform decisions. And it really helps us build a multi-year program and service review plan that it's in one of the council policies, the program and service review policy. And the inventory was also used by EY when they just recently completed the operational and fiscal review. And if council remembers, it was a very valuable tool for them to have. They were able to confirm that we really don't provide any services that are not typically provided by other municipalities. But they also helped us identify some opportunities to optimize our services and to look at different ways of delivering services. So we're going to switch to how changes are made and how inventory is updated, unless there are any questions that I can answer. Looks like we're good. Okay. So how changes are made and updates to the inventory. So for external services, as I mentioned, the inventory is approved by council. So we will be coming to council in May for the official approval. To make any changes to services and service levels, so council can, one, make a motion to request adjustment to a service or service level. And this works both ways. If we're increasing service levels, or if we're adding new service, any adjustments that we're making to already approved inventory, it works for all of those. So then administration prepares agenda report and the directors provide a little bit more detail related to that adjustment from the motion. So the impact on budget, impact on service delivery to community, impact on people. So this is really directors' way to provide council with more information, including cost associated with delivering that service overall and what cost or adjustments may look like if change is made as per council motion. And also if we're adding a new service, administration can also provide financial impacts related to adding a new service that we have not provided in the past. So we bring that agenda report forward for those recommended adjustments. And then this is really something that council can do at any time. So, and the same goes for administration. Administration can also bring forward a recommendation for council to adjust the services. Back to comment about performance of services. Sometimes administration may notice that there's just not the service can improve, or we can do it differently, or just do adjustment in any way. So administration can do the same and bring forward a report to council for consideration. So this is really can be done anytime during the year. We do encourage this to be to take place before proposed budget is pulled together. And I know that you will probably think of our experience and process last year. We did it differently. These service level adjustments were included in proposed budget, but it really creates a bit of a challenge in our process to make those adjustments in the middle of budget deliberations. So ideally, we would have any adjustments that need to be made before, so that once we pull proposed budget together, it really reflects those decisions already. Sometimes the little ones, small ones may happen during deliberations, but hopefully they will not. And also a lot of times to actually really realize true cost savings, especially, it takes time. Like it takes time to implement something new to actually see impact of that decision. So for us, a council motion is formal direction for you to proceed with implementation. So as I mentioned, it may take time to implement, but for us, when we have that council motion, we start working on implementing. So as you receive an agenda report, that's where directors provide a little bit more information related to what implementation may look like. So before we move into, I'll pass it over to Dawn and she will give you a quick overview of the inventory and give more time for questions specific to sections of the inventory and any program areas that council may have. But a couple of things that we would like you to consider is, so obviously any general questions, we'll be more than happy to answer your questions now. It will really help us ensure that the inventory that we bring to you later in May is ready for your approval. So any questions, anything that you would like to flag, please do so. We would also like council comments related to any potential service or service level adjustments. So if you are aware of, you're already thinking, hey, we should look at this, we should look at this, give us your thoughts. And it's something that administration will consider, and as appropriate, we can bring forward through that agenda report and potentially prior to budget time. And also, we wouldn't mind getting some feedback from council related to approach we use for service level adjustments. So as you know, 2 years in a row, we had to bring forward some service level adjustments to help us lower the tax increase. So first year, we had separate service level adjustment documents that were shared with council, and then council had motions that we took and we adjusted the proposed budget. And last year, we incorporated service level adjustments into proposed budget so that, the tax rate that we brought forward already incorporated those. So for this year, as you know, it's another year for us to take on that annual cycle. So we would appreciate your thoughts. How would you like us to do this this year? And we will take your feedback and, insights and incorporate into our process this year. So just a couple of things to keep in mind, but we do hope we can get some feedback from you and some comments that we can incorporate moving forward.
When do you want those comments, like now or?
You can do it now, or you can do it after you had more time to think about it. And we will just work with Carrie to make sure that we get those.
Let's do it today, but I won't do it right now. But
Yeah,
I got some comments on.
okay, perfect. Today is perfect, but if you need more time, we can arrange.
Relay my thoughts.
Okay. So we will stop at the end again. So don't feel like this is your only time, but we will start going through the inventory. And once we're done, we will have another slide that will look exactly like this one. And that will be your another opportunity to share anything that you haven't had a chance to share as we were reviewing the inventory.
Question, has the administration exec team taken a look at this at their level and said there are things that don't make sense to them, kind of like they put a little flag beside it and said, wow, things have changed over the last couple of years and they don't make sense. Either the service level doesn't make sense, they're out of sync now, or that they're not meeting the service level. Like has administration looked at this and kind of put any red flags beside it?
Not red flags, but so what could flags. We did a couple of things. So in 2021, We had a workshop with our leadership team and we used PBB for that. And we went over every single service, and we identified insights, which basically means, okay, what are potential things that we can do with this? You know, can we stop delivering this service? Can we look at how the service is delivered? Can we reduce service level? Do we need to increase service level? So we've done that with leadership team. Then we took the same exercise to council and we got the same feedback from council. So council had opportunity to look at services and say, okay, keep status quo, look at adjusting. So we had council insights as well. And then we gave that information to EY as they were doing operational and fiscal review. So they used all of that insight from council, insights from administration, and they provided kind of final, what they called opportunities for us to explore. So if you remember, they kind of noted that we pretty much took care of everything that is immediate, short term. So no low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And now we're left with some of those bigger decisions. So some bigger decisions that we need often, you know, council direction to proceed or not. And it often has to do with how we deliver service. And, you know, some of those other opportunities related to delivery of service and service levels. So we use that information the last 2 years to bring forward those service level adjustments. And you know, so what we do is we bring it forward to council, and then if council approves it, we can proceed with making those adjustments. And if council does not approve, then we carry on delivering that service as it's approved.
Okay.
So we still have that information from you know, doing the PBB last time, and it is what our directors used last time to bring forward and include some of these service level adjustments in proposed budget.
Okay.
Thank you.
Follow-up question. I just didn't want to take anybody else. So how about the tie-in with Ernst & Young's report, and then the tie-in with some of the recommendations arising out of the COVID-19 recovery task force? I mean, there were some adjustments or suggested adjustments to potentially services provided. And I realize that work is ongoing on that, but then how will that get captured going forward?
So some of that work, as you said, it is in progress, and where we can make necessary improvements, we're making them. But sometimes in order for us to realize those benefits stated in the EY report, we require additional investment, right? So sometimes like we need to make additional investment to actually realize benefits. And this often happens with technology, right? If we do want to automate our processes, if we do want to be more, you know, efficient with use of technology, well, we need to invest in technology, right? And the other examples would be different way of delivering service through partnerships, or, you know, like
Should we even be in the service?
should we be in that service? So those are some conversations that will be coming to council. So I think you will see more of those coming that will be linked to the operational review opportunities. And then, you know, we will come to council both for insights and input, as well as for the formal decision after that. And then based on council's direction, we can proceed. But some of those, it's not, you know, we can make a decision to stop delivering certain services. We really need council's direction to tell us.
So I was just wondering if there was some mechanism in place based, like going forward, because you're asking potentially Q1, but some of that's obviously going to take further than that.
It will take further than that.
Yeah,
right?
and so I'm just wondering what mechanisms administration is hoping for in relation to that, because it would, I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't adjust it, but I'm just.
So
I'm just curious.
come to you for the approval of this inventory, it will be as we have it right now.
Yeah.
So, and then any other adjustments, it takes time, right?
Would it be too much work for administration to identify those? I'm not going to call them action items, but recommendations coming out saying this is a recommendation in EY to review this or look at this. Is that too much work?
I think we can make that connection.
Okay, I'm not trying to make work. I mean, it would just be something to identify those levels, those services and or those service levels that might be impacted by recommendations. And it also feeds into potentially what ones we can look at from an internal audit perspective.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, so we can make that, maybe it's not going to be in the inventory, but when we bring inventory forward, we can give you, just that information. Here is a inventory service, how we called it.
Yeah.
This is the operational and fiscal review opportunity that was identified, and maybe like some work in progress so that you know what's been done already.
All right, thanks.
The agenda reports that get presented will of course use that rationale
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah, as long as I could see it somewhere where I'm seeing something that, I can remember some, but I can't remember all.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, we do have implementation.
Holding up my memory is in.
That's right. There is just a lot of different documents because we have operational and fiscal review implementation plan that outlines those opportunities. Then we have recovery task force that outlines opportunities to do more, to do different things. And then we have service and service level inventory. So we'll try to create a
What
visual.
I'm going at, because I'm looking at those same documents and I'm referring to them, but it would be easier for me if it's not too much work for administration, Mr. Hiltz, if it's not too much work.
I think that's something that we can actually do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, clear point.
that's
Yeah, we already have it in the system. We just,
for us.
Okay, as long as I'm not making hard work, but it would just make it easier to see if we see a lot of overlap or a lot of potential work or a lot of opportunity or nothing.
yeah, for sure. And I think what's important to note is that comment that I made. Sometimes we have to make investment to actually implement something.
Okay.
So we will try to provide that insight for council as well, because again, for some of those opportunities, we just don't have resources. So
No, I understand, but
we'll provide that insight as well.
thank you.
So we will get started. As I mentioned, Dawn will kind of just stop at each of the sections of the service and service level inventory. We will not go into details, but you can ask any questions related to each of the program areas. And then we'll come back to this slide and get council, make sure that we got your input, including related to that process that you would like us to use this year or consider for this year. Dawn, over to you.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm Dawn Fedorovich, if we haven't met yet. I work with Daria in Strategic Services. So just as a high-level overview of the external inventory, basically we have 9 programs, which are those big outcomes that we're trying to achieve as a municipality. Community development, environmental stewardship, et cetera. And then in the external inventory, this breaks down into 37 sub-programs, which just allow further refinement of that program. As Daria mentioned, we do have an internal service level inventory as well. So that documents the services that we provide to support the community-facing services. I'll make a little note here that if you were noticing the numbering in the inventory that might skip letters or skip numbers, that's because some of those services are in the internal side versus the external side. So like Daria said, we're just going to go through each program, and we have the directors on hand here to answer questions that you have specific to that program. But our first one is community amenities. So do you have any questions for clarification about any of these services that we provide to enhance the amenities that we provide to the community, or any suggestions for us to look at for service level adjustments, perhaps?
It just goes back to where I was going on this one, particularly as you scroll down into like the Arden and to other things. The information about the level of service refers you to a policy or another document. So I'm like, for example, there's an opportunity in EY whether or not we should be continuing to be in the game of providing, like operating the Arden. There's another one, and I'm going by memory because tech is looking at my
Pretty good memory. Good one.
and then there's the other one in relation to our visual arts space downstairs. And around, is that being, recognizing we've just gone through pandemic and access denied. Is there, how do we get the information whether or not those are still viable services that we should be offering internal to not only SAP, but with internal from a service that the city provides versus a community organization or a third party?
So I know that we have Elizabeth online, so I will get Elizabeth to speak to work that we're currently doing related to considering that art and theater operating.
Yeah, and not just, Elizabeth, I was just using that as an example. I'm not meant to pick on you.
And the inventory, though, is what is council approved as of now.
Yeah.
So there's been no decision yet, for example, on the art-ins. So when that happens, the service.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of going to where my leading questions were, because a lot of this is around, we have this document in front of us and we know that there's other work going on. So are we, when, the decision, or when we will have information that we could actually make a determination, that type of thing.
Yeah, so the process is there. We do the review, we have recommendation, we bring it to council, council makes a motion, makes a decision, we implement. But we can certainly use art and theater as one example, because I know that Elizabeth is prepared to answer that question, because we're working on it, right, Elizabeth?
But thanks.
Want to do it now?
I queued you up. Do you want her to answer it?
Yeah, I think Elizabeth, she should be on.
Yeah. Do you
There
want me?
she is.
Do you want me to answer how we're evaluating that, or where you can get the information?
No, just the process that we're going to use to bring it forward for council information and input.
Absolutely. So we would be bringing it forward in an update report that would identify our current state, look at where we are currently with our operating budget, and then identify what the potential options, including risks and opportunities, and get council direction as to how they would like us to move forward.
No, and that's perfect. I mean, I'm just trying to,
Yeah.
a timing perspective and a work through in relation to this after.
This one is going to probably come in front of council
Yeah.
workshop or, conversation in the fall. So closer to the fall.
And sorry for dominating you guys. I'm asking questions.
Oh, no, these are all good questions.
The other issues are though around the use of the spaces within in SAP. So around the visual arts. So how would we make a determination as to whether that's something going forward? I mean, I realize there's a cultural aspect, there's a programming, and it's something we're doing, but thank you very much, sir. Is it something that is being reviewed or looked at? Or how would we ask for something like that to be looked at?
Go ahead and now.
I was just going to say that, so the opportunities that were identified in the operational and fiscal review, all of those that we put as proceeding are in some level of progress. But as we talked about during strategic planning session, it's really like we need separate conversation with council to say, okay, which of these you want us to proceed with and how do you want us to prioritize these, just to get your input. And then we go and do the work and then bring it back to council for some conversations, for some insight, additional comments, and then formal motion to whatever recommendation. The process is very similar, but.
So specifically, you're asking about the SAP states and the arts and culture group. So
yeah,
are you talking about
well, I'm just saying it's identified as something that's in community amenities, and it's identified as I'm trying to find it now that I have it in my hand here. Okay, so one or A12E, right? So it says St. Albert Place Visual Arts Studios access. It allows the services to, or the description is around all of those, cultural or culture events that are, the multi-craft pottery, the painting studios. And I'm realizing now that we're coming out of a pandemic where they were probably not even allowed access into there until very recently. And so is this something that we should be continuing to offer within this building, recognizing some of the issues that were maybe going forward coming out of it? Is it something that's ongoing? This is again operational, so I don't want to get too far into it, but is it like who's looking after the maintenance? We replaced the kiln a number of years ago. Who's responsible for that? Those are operational questions, I realize, but so
to me, that would have to be like if council wants us to go that far down looking at it, I think that's almost like a notice of.
Okay, and that's where I'm wondering around. So if I'm needing to, but for me, that's where I was going. If I'm looking at the service level of service, which is on the far right-hand column, I have to go searching for that information, or I have to make a IR or a council inquiry or.
So to me, the first one on that one would be an IR.
Yeah.
So provide us as much, details on how the relationship between
Okay.
guilds work with the city, or however you want to put that in. And then basically after the IR, then you could take it as a notice of motion if you wanted to change how we're delivering the service.
And and please, I'm only identifying that I'm not in any,
I'm with you.
I'm identifying one that I just picked off. I'm not trying to say we don't deliver that or not, but I'm just using that as an example.
And we do have a group, like, there's groups out there that we pay for, we provide space to and stuff like that. But it's also a duplication of another group providing service.
Yeah.
So should that be transferred? How do we move towards providing a single point of service?
Yeah.
That's that question that council, we could.
Exactly. I mean, it becomes philosophical.
And
Okay.
This is the point of today's workshop, is what are those snagging questions, or what areas? So we're just sort of giving our directors a heads up, like, oh, there may be coming some information requests for this kind of information. We don't have all the answers for you today on those specifics, but this is for you today to ask these questions and to, let us know where your thoughts are leaning or that kind of stuff, so that we can have robust information to bring to you at a future date.
Okay, thanks.
So I would chime in a little bit on Ken's. I certainly had the same thing. And I was kind of I'm conflicted a little bit because, high level, we have botanical arts as our overarching message about the city. But my question of framing this is this the best way to deliver those services specifically, Ken? And I'm not picking on anybody, but it's a question of saying, is this the best way to deliver those services within St. Albert Place? Or is there a better place or better way to deliver those services?
Well, there's a good example.
If I could, Carrie, just to take it, the other question I had was around art in public spaces. If we don't have the budget and commit to do that, I personally think our art in public spaces is a good thing. There are probably some places I'd like to see more art. But if we don't support it with a budget, how does it relate to being here as a key service delivery? So I want to make sure that we either don't have it on the service delivery.
Part of the service,
have it funded and it is on the service delivery.
Part of our service delivery is also the maintenance of existing art. That is very important for asset management to maintain and care for the existing art that we have, even if we don't add new art. But that piece is part of asset management. So that may be something that Elizabeth can provide more detail on.
And again, it's coming back to, we currently do it.
Yeah.
So what you see, the inventory is what council is currently approving. And we do deliver that as part of the service to community. It may be a different way of service, but it is there for their enjoyment and for encouraging, the culture and beautiful spaces. So again, like if we, get council direction that, you may want us to look at different way or how we invest, or if we provide once it goes through the process and decision is made to adjust in any way, then you can see it captured differently in this inventory. But right now, we're simply capturing what the current council approval is.
And if I could,
I was going to say, here's a good example. So last year we made a change to the service level inventory that it basically said that we'll offer youth counseling services, but it used to say the city will employ a person to offer youth counseling services, but it was changed to the city will offer youth counseling services. The staff identified that we could offer more services by a third party than for us doing it ourselves. So the biggest question is, by keeping it at a high level, it's like that you will deliver public art.
Yep.
And then it's up to administration to figure out how that is. And then that's when that debate comes in later. It's like, well, how much money do you need to do this? How are you going to do it? And stuff like that. But admin needs to come up with that, how we will deliver. And then that has to satisfy that service level that's been identified. But if you put in the service level that you will put public art pieces along each pathway in the city, then that becomes a lot more restrictive of how and everything else that we get into. So that's just kind of that's a good example of going through that process. Go ahead.
Ed has a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Don't mean to jump in front of you, Diane. I was just going to say is that as we go through, one of the things about the service level inventory is that it's just a record of what we're doing. But what's not there is sort of the history and the decisions as to why we got there.
Yeah.
And so if we were to say, well, let's not do that, let's do it a different way, we better understand the history of why we got here so that we can actually understand the decision we're making.
And that will come through the
The
AI.
guilds in particular.
Yeah, 100%. And that's where I was talking about that overlay, and you could even add the overlay, like we do it in policy revisions, you always have the stacked kind of times we've changed it. I mean, it would be interesting to see without, again, causing a whole bunch of work for administration, whether or not, because you hit it right on. Like, why did we offer that service at the very, very beginning? And has time changed?
And I think it's a
In their
combination.
mind, they actually earned the right to be there for doing a whole bunch of work
Yeah.
when this was all built in the first place. So if you ask them, this is not the city doing anything. This is repaying them for their efforts back.
Okay,
years
fair
ago.
enough. Yeah, that's
But if you
information.
don't understand that, only because I've got the bruises to show that.
And it's very good comment, and it does combine a couple of processes. So I think to your point is giving you that information so you can see this is what currently we have in the inventory. Here is what came from the operational and fiscal review. This is maybe some comments that came from task force. And then it's additional information from our directors, because our directors can provide often that background.
Yeah, no, and I mean, and it would something that would be in an IR motion anyways.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, Diane, I mean, I've been yapping at you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm aligned on those two though.
yeah.
Diane,
Yeah, so the only thing I wanted to add, and it was just to your point about, saying that we're providing something in the inventory if there's no budget for it. So I'll just specifically just speak to the public art one. So we would basically say that the inventory as it sits today is what is in our budget. That's what we're budgeted for. The reduction in public art was done in 20 and 2021 just as a response to COVID for savings, but it was always identified as a temporary kind of suspension of adding public art for a couple of reasons. A, for money, and also to just, obviously the presence in the community. If we're, adding a bunch of money to public art when people are losing their jobs and all, it just, the optics behind it weren't great. But we didn't take it out of the inventory because it was always intended as a temporary just stopgap measure. So that's why it's still in the inventory. And this year, the budget will include an allocation for public art based on the policy.
Good. Well, that's good.
Any questions from Councillor Romansky or Councillor Hughes or Jolie? No? Okay.
So I mean, if we see something that we don't think we'll have time to send it to you or something like that. For example, a 1.5C ice surfaces, you talk about maintaining outdoor services, yet you identify St. Albert Curling Club, and as far as I'm sure they're not outdoors. So I'll just send that to you.
like especially if you made comments in Circle, if you can just send it through Carrie,
Yeah.
and we'll go through your comments, the ones that we can make because maybe it was typo or something else, we'll make it. And if
Just don't know whether or not it aligns there or if the actual description needs to be amended, something. Okay.
we'll take your comments.
Yeah, I'd rather do that than get bogged down today with that type.
Might be one of those history questions.
Yeah, when we played on the river.
We just put the roof over it. But no, any of those comments you can forward to us and we'll.
Yeah, otherwise we'll be here till
Exactly.
way too late. Okay.
So we'll move on then to community development.
No, go ahead.
Can you
I'm
change the
just,
slide?
yeah,
Curling.
looking at the time. We will have a quick lunch break.
Okay. When is lunch?
12:10. So
Okay.
just to kind of give heads up, we'll get started with this one, but we'll take a quick break then.
So community development is a really big category. As you can see, there's 10 sub-programs involved here. Lots of things contribute to community developments, our events, our cultural programming, our economic development, recreational programming, social development, even our truth and reconciliation programming. So do you have any questions or for clarification on any of these services? Or do you have any comments about, again, things that you would maybe see changed in the future, increases, decreases, or just questions that you have?
It did come up at strat planning that we want more events.
Sorry, you'll get, quiet. In relation to, so I mean, the service delivery, like for New Year's Eve fireworks and all that, that's a third person provider, a third party provider. So we don't identify that.
It's actually there is a.
New Year's Eve is here.
Okay, I just see, oh, there it is. Sorry, it's a separate one. I apologize. I wondered why then it was separate from Canada Day versus.
New Year's Eve is different. Like, so we did it by event. So
Okay.
Canada Day.
Gotcha.
it's Canada Day event, and then in
Okay.
December, New Year's Eve event.
Victory Life Church used to do New Year's Eve, and we used to give them a grant. We
So
not,
the how it gets developed is not in the service level inventory, right? So, but the city does provide
That's up in there.
celebratory events.
Yeah.
And I think maybe Danielle is here if she wants to answer any other questions about New Year's Eve.
You're on mute.
Danielle.
You're on mute, Danielle.
I certainly can't answer any questions if anyone has any.
does Victory Life still do the New Year's Eve?
No, they handed it off to us about 4 years ago that we now implement New Year's Eve fireworks is implemented by the city directly.
And let's, so I've got a motion today to potentially host either the 55 plus with Alberta Games. How does that?
That will increase,
Which one, like, and
So that would be, because it would just be a one-off. We wouldn't be hosting that annually, right? So it could be a special event. Maybe it would fall. Maybe entertainment events would have to change to like entertainment and sporting events. And then that allows for a little bit more of that general one-off type of events.
Question for you, Dawn. And
Mhm.
what happened if the council decided, every 8 years we'll host a.
yeah, so maybe put like a little
That becomes
every year,
service level that we
Yeah.
look for one every 8 years.
every 8 year would be service level.
or we'd put
Yeah, we would.
$1,000
Something with that.
or something.
Yes,
Yeah.
That's what we do for the election, right?
yes.
Yeah.
So we will include it as a service. If it's permanent, we will include it as a service. We would use service level as to be held every X years and go from there.
Can, because I feel bad, I'm dominating.
Oh, we love questions.
Yeah, so I mean, so are we under B2 yet?
Yeah.
Community organization. So who does that? Facilitation and support. So we, financial competency, information referral, leadership development, organizational and board development. Is that like
Danielle's team.
Danielle's team?
Danielle can.
So I mean, like that's, that's like the information I'd like to know whether or not, like, what is happening there? Are we having like 2 people show up? Are we doing it annually and providing ongoing services? Are we doing one-offs? I mean, because, is there a need for that? Can it be provided like again, or is it better provided from another outside agency? I'm just, those are the types of questions that I'm asking because there's specific programs that I'm not 100, if it's around the health of the community and it might be something that we would deliver, but at the same time, is it biannually? Is it once a year? Is it like?
Danielle, we were talking about B2, about
Yeah.
community organization support. Can you provide a little bit more?
I certainly can. We have a team of 3 CRCs and they're community recreation coordinators, and their role is specifically to work with our 65 not-for-profit groups that we support in recreation and parks. That's anything from St. Albert Soccer Association, St. Albert Minor Hockey, that variety of groups. Their work is really daily with those groups. They do some events annually, but they do daily work with them in managing leases. They do grant review with them. They also work with them as they're making amendments to their lease. So they'll, do some capital approvals. There's pieces they'll do with them if they're having board issues in terms of keeping those organizations healthy and sustainable moving forward for service provision in our community.
See, that's something that's great to know. Like, it would be like is that on our report card somewhere? Is that on our stat tracker? Is that on our, because the health and wellness of our community agencies are important, but they're also, some of them are coming from my days at CSAC. They come looking for grants to get outside facilitators to do something similar, right? So, that's just maybe a weak example, but I'm just wondering about some of that information is something whether or not we continue to provide or we direct them to something.
Perfect. Yeah,
And-
this is what today's about. Go ahead.
May I just add to, so FCSS and Culture Branch also both do this work with their nonprofit and social agencies as well, including our FCSS funded agencies to just make sure that they can keep their heads above water. We offer the same programs and services and share offerings for webinars and training where possible.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
John, the one for me, and it was, well, I'll use the numbering system now, B10, under the B, 10.
Bingo.
Just truth and reconciliation. It seemed lacking in something measurable as a service level. It talks about a report and those kind of things.
This is a very new program for us.
Yeah, is there more, something more substantive that we can look at, and really beef that up, like make it more meaningful? And I'm struggling for how to express it. It just struck me that this is something important. We talk about it every meeting we have, we give a land recognition. And then it kind of just, when I read this, I kind of just felt, how can I make it, how can we as council help make it more substantive there? Maybe it's already underway, I don't know.
We have Cindy on the call. Again, it's capturing what we currently do. And what we currently do is we need to do more.
Yeah.
We need to do more, and we need to get kind of that embedded into our community a bit more. But we do have Cindy online. Cindy, would you like to comment a bit more?
Yes, thank you for the question, Councillor Killick. I think, as you know, in June, we will be coming forward with a draft bylaw for council's consideration for an Indigenous Advisory Committee. So we're waiting so that if that motion gets approved and if a committee is established, they'll be able to guide or provide some recommendations of what they think should be included in that service level inventory. So, because we've been very reactive, probably the last year as we've been trying to address some things. We've done some great proactive work in the past, absolutely. But in terms of maybe a more formal structured program. So we're trying really hard to catch up, but there's a lot of that kind of foundational work.
Other times you're low level, like film editing.
And then we hope that, once we get some direction in terms of approach at the end of June, we'll be able to come forward with that.
Yeah, good. It just, that'll fill in the blanks. Thank you.
Sure.
Yep.
Before we stop for lunch, any of our remote counselors, again, do you have any questions on community development?
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
So, I mean, is it important under a sub-program that economic development falls under community? Is that the way it is? I mean, for me, I see economic development almost as its own standalone one, but is that just something that's in the framework, the municipal framework that's puts them in together?
Yes, it's part of that framework. So economic development builds the community.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Yeah, no, I just see, I mean, it just seems that we're talking about services that we deliver for the community, but we're not, I mean, economic development
Big one.
is a big one. And I sense that it kind of gets lost in there, or not lost, but I just thought it would have its own.
Yeah, but it probably could, but based on the framework that we're trying to align to, it falls under community.
Yeah, as long as, I mean, if that's what the framework has it as, and I just see all of those items as being something critical moving forward for us. Okay.
And we can come back to D or B if you want to take a break and come back.
No, I'm good. I'm sorry. Those are the ones that I was talking about.
It's 12:11. We had the lunch planned for 20 minutes, so we would come back at 12:30. Does that work for in person?
Yeah.
Okay. So for our Zoom participants, we will be back at 12:30. 12:31.
Sending yours by Skip.
Okay, we'll see you later. Thank you. Andrew, we're ready to go.
Oh, I heard an echo.
We're echoing. Hello? Okay, that's good. Was it you, Sean? Yeah. Okay.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you guys had a good lunch.
I will share my screen again, so just give us a second here. Okay, here we go.
There's no more questions about community development. Then we're going to move into environmental stewardship, section C. Can you do one more slide? Oh, sorry. Thoughts, comments, or questions for clarification on any of these services?
Get to it.
Mental stewardship.
Wow, B is long. Where?
Yeah, B is
There we go.
long.
So
Yeah, it's on-
page 2256.
Well, it actually starts with maintenance of sports
Oh, right,
fields
yeah.
and parks. See, this is, again, going over to what I was saying.
Grass cutting.
So you've got a level of detail that I thought you have access to, or didn't you put it in? Put it, so it was just, that's just the example I was using around. For some areas you have referred to, in other areas you have, fertilizing will occur in June and fall, aerating will be whatever, and so you could have referred to policy in relation to that, or find more information for the other one of the two.
Maybe just more consistency with when we refer to.
Yeah, exactly. Consistency, because you, for example, you've got weekly cutting up to 18 times per year. Well, with weekly trimming.
Less than that now, thanks, Mike.
That's not true. These are sports fields. They're still 18.
Okay.
For boulevards.
Yeah, before you.
Did incorporate any motions that were made in the last budget. That has all been incorporated in here.
And they're in confidence, right? My name isn't as. A FOIP out of it.
No, it's not. It's a good call.
To our remote counselors, do you have any comments or questions about any of these services?
Yeah, just the environmental protection. So, I mean, I know that kind of going forward, what a lot of organizations are doing is integrating environmental protection within all services in the community. So, I mean, how could that be reflected in a document like this? If environmental protection was, part of the mandate of, the operations service or something like that. I mean, would this always stay as a standalone service level, even if we did see integration within other service levels?
Not sure if Ryan or Megan are here for this.
Ryan's
in the parking lot.
There, I was going to mention that we have a environmental review process for capital projects. And on the operations, I do kind of find it's a little bit ad hoc, where it's we're doing something and a member of the environment team is contacted about, and as an example, we put a rink over an old landfill, and there was some gas and safety issues that came out of that. So environment and safety were both contacted on that.
But that's not kind of a normal process for, I don't know, like installing public art or different things like that. Okay.
I think if I can,
I was just going to comment, we need a trigger point. We need like capital new projects is an easy trigger point. So we need some kind of method to say, I'd hate to be a barrier. I'd hate to say everything has to go through environment. And that's the one caution I'd say is there's a balance here of larger projects having an environmental review, which always happens, versus an operational activity that would have a very minimal environmental impact. And it could just be a call to our environment team and they say, hey, did you do this? Like, it might just be a quick little advisory method. So.
Yeah, well, and I'm thinking more, not even a call to the environment team, just that kind of that lens is you know, I'm going to pick on Cindy because her name's right there. You know, when Cindy is undertaking activities through her programs, that's just a lens that's applied. So. Okay.
Can I
Thank
add,
you.
Natalie? I think
Yeah.
it's like when we get an area structure plan, we circulate it through departments. Environment should be, like Ryan said, he would hesitate to have everything going through the environment, but why? Why not? Like, you know, lunch today. They could have an environmental lens on that, stop with the plastic utensils and, you know, don't order too much food or whatever, like environment. And that's why it needs to be a bigger department. Does have a lens on a lot, right? And they should.
I can just add something. So the inventory captures services provided. What the conversation is here is like, now how? So I think it's a combination of those things. So what are those? So how do we, if we decide as the organization, as council, that we want to put environmental kind of lens on everything, it becomes part of our principles, right? Like it's something that we simply adopt as our business practice. So we can speak to it at the beginning of the inventory, you know, and then internally is how we then implement that. So part of it can be, as Ryan mentioned, you know, what are those triggers? Looking at other processes, where can we embed into other processes, and also building organizational capacity. Because maybe we don't need environment person to say, don't use plastic fork and knives, but if everybody in the organization follows it, it will just automatically happen. They will not be ordered, they will not be used. Carrie,
I was just gonna say though, through the process, if this becomes a council priority through the strategic planning process, and that's going to provide the lens on everything we do.
Yeah.
If you put environment as one of your top, if that's what council chooses, then that through a business planning process and through that continuing loop process that we use for all of our strategic planning, then this is going to have a trickle down approach that will be constantly being evaluated against all the stuff we do, service levels or service delivery programs and everything.
Yeah.
So that's where you guys have to tell us that through that strategic planning process.
That's
training.
helpful. Thank you, Carrie.
But, well, what about international standards? I mean, we have them on environment. So ISO 14001, is that a standard across the city? And do we maintain it? And if we
Just
do,
transit.
should it be noted in our service level standard?
So we have, let's say, for example, when we build buildings, we do have the ISO as a requirement that we have to meet a certain level. So that is a policy that drives that, but I don't know which ones we have and which ones we don't, but I do know that.
It's not ISO though, is it?
Pardon?
It's not ISO, it's our green building.
But we do,
Oh, is it?
Well, it's like, it's a lead.
there's lead, and then we do have ISO standards as
Yeah.
well that are in the and for public operations and environment, but it's internal. So they're in the internal.
We don't have the certification now, or
But we do for our buildings, like when we built a fire hall, it had to be, I don't know if it was bronze or silver lead. So,
I thought the policy said we get to choose which standard we wanted to follow, whether it was lead or there was other ones. Remember Tanya Doran standing up there talking about all the other standards? So at that point, based on our tolerance of budget, which one of these environmental standards will we follow?
Just on that one though, oh, Sheena, sorry, go ahead. I'll let you go. Just if we're going to adopt a ESG as a criteria, wouldn't that be incorporated into kind of it's our overarching, so we would just therefore take that lens and apply it throughout the organization, right? So if we started to apply ESG, then we would.
We would probably, as you know, as Carrie said, if as formal direction, we would need to spend some time to understand what's impacted and how, and embed as much into existing processes as possible and build organizational capacity. Like that's the way to streamline it.
Okay.
And then have those key touch points to make sure that all of that lens is applied.
I just think that would be important to see what the implications of all of that was, right? Because there's costs.
It's huge costs.
There'll be some extra work for sure.
Anyway, sorry, Sheena.
Oh, good. Okay. I just wanted to clarify about pesticides and herbicides. I think we're still using some that would be considered unfriendly for humans or animals. And I know there's like statements like, okay, well then we won't use it, during peak times or something like that, but the residue still stays there. Has there been any discussion about changing to something that's more environmentally friendly and non-toxic? Because I know we've had emails, and I've had emails as well that I forwarded about, someone's walking and their pet happens to be on the grass and it was sprayed hours earlier or an hour earlier and the dog gets really sick. So has there been any discussion about changing over those standards to doing things that were strictly non-toxic for humans and pets?
I think that goes out to Jay, unless Ryan's.
Councillor Killick's offered to cut and pick all the dandelion.
I'm willing to have him do that if he has spare time. I'm just looking.
I don't think he
just
does.
put right into
No,
the
I don't
service
think he
standard.
does. I think I'll be out helping him.
Okay.
Or Louise online? Jay or
Yeah.
Louise?
Yeah, I'll let Louise speak to that. We
Okay,
do have
thank
all.
you, Jay. Louise? Oh, there she is.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Hughes. So every chemical that we do use is approved by the province, the Alberta Pest Control Act. There's certain weeds that we have to control, we're mandated by legislation to control. If we were to choose an environmental option, and there's certainly one, iron chelate is one, and the city of Edmonton tested that. What they found is that took 4 times as much treatment and certainly had less results. And so the cost to actually use the absolute environmental friendly versions can be astronomical versus the one hit of something that, I mean, every chemical has a negative impact, but they are far more effective at what they do. So the importance where we get into the struggle with the public is how we sign the areas. And they just really have to, most of the chemicals we use are inert as soon as they hit. So they don't move through the soil. They are strictly there to selectively get the weeds that we are trying to maintain. So we sign it and ask people to stay off it. We have a program where they can phone. We will not spray behind their houses. We will let them know when we're doing it. We do not go near schoolyards. We do run into conflict with the school boards where they will spray, but that's unknown to us. We can't control what they do on their lands. They just follow the pest control guidelines. And so people, where we've run into problems with the public too, is when they conflict with what the schools are doing. So we've totally cut back on every year. We're cutting back on what we do use. We've tried steaming. That didn't work out very well. The machining just didn't quite work. So we're following with everything we can do to reduce it. And we do an awful lot of hand pulling, which is just labor intensive, but it works quite well. So every year we are using less and less. We haven't got to the point where we're zero yet.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Any other?
It goes to a point that it might cost more to use a little bit more environmentally friendly agent to deal with the noxious weeds. And so that would be a service level if we wanted to push for the better product, put more work on Louise, but we'd have to give her the resources and you'd have to fund it, et cetera. But
budget, right?
Yeah, so yeah, that's a good point.
I have a kind of similar question that I hear all the time, and they're already starting to hear again about residents' concerns around black knot. And
get so much in my backyard,
and it goes specifically very much to C12A. It talks about ornamental trees, but the solution is structural pruning as opposed to disease pruning. And I don't know whether the two are related but it just, and I know there's reasons why we kind of don't, it's a challenge to do when people don't do it on their own homes or commercial sites or whatever. But would we address that specifically as a disease, not a structural?
Louise, this one comes back to you.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on black knot and what we can do?
So the problem with black knot is the province hasn't mandated control of it, and the reason they haven't is because any kind of rose species is actually naturally present in our river valleys, so impossible to control in the natural stands. So it comes out of the natural stands and goes on to both the public and private trees. So yes, structural pruning will help. But if you are structurally pruning, you need to be doing it for a purpose. What are you actually trying to obtain when you are pruning? And when you have the disease present in the tree, you need to remove it, and you need to remove it at the right point in time, which is prior to the fungus becoming airborne in the spring. So our programs internally are to prune that out. And so you may not always be left with the nicest structure, but you need to get rid of the actual physical knot that's in the tree. So we do that, and then we educate residents on what they can do on their lands. We do not control private trees, and so you'll see it in the parking lots. You'll see it on private lawns. We can only educate them. We can't force them to control it. So it does generate a little neighbor-to-neighbor conflict. The problem comes when the knot is actually physically on the main stem of the tree. And at that point, it chokes the tree and stops any water and nutrients from moving within the tree. And at that point, the tree is done. There is nothing that can be done with it, and the tree is removed. So we do not replace right now with Schuberts or Maydays or anything like that. They are not part of our standards. We've asked for them to be stocked until the disease naturally runs its course. If residents stay on top of it, they can prune it out, but at some point, it will likely lead to a not very nice looking tree, or ultimately the death of the tree, because the disease hasn't run its course through the province yet.
Hopefully they do run its course, because I love Maydays.
Any other questions or comments for environmental stewardship?
Yeah, I thought we got rid of the large item drop off, and it's still in the service level inventory. Did we not get rid of it?
Jay, and do you know, was large item that get approved for change, or was just discussed at the last council?
Through budget.
To be honest, actually, I'd have to go back and look. I believe we had one that was reduced to once a year from 2.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Oh, did we used to do it twice a year?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's
Okay, because
Yeah,
it says once a year here, so then it's correct. Okay.
I said that to the mayor, but
Okay, no, good.
I mentioned that to the mayor.
All right, well, let's move on then.
I'm in the mayor's chair,
That was,
apparently.
That's right.
I'm confused. I think there's large item pickup,
It was the drop off we got rid of.
Drop off.
drop off at service. I thought we got rid of it all.
Together?
Drop off at service is gone.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's still in here.
That's my.
Sure.
We'll double check on that one. So
Yeah.
for that.
I'm
Sure
sorry.
it was gone.
Residents drop off large household items for garbage disposal at designated location,
Okay, no,
and you require additional garbage tag organized at minimum once a year. It says in our.
So we'll double check. I thought we had caught it, but maybe we missed it.
Just to step in, what we canceled was the I can't remember the specific.
Take it or leave it?
Yes, please.
Isn't that the same thing?
No.
no.
Okay.
Large item drop off is your couches, your washing machines, that kind of
And
stuff.
we don't let people take them? Okay.
No.
Oh, okay, so that's at the
I didn't know. it's
craft
different than
center,
curbside.
right?
Yeah, it's a-
That's curbside, your large item.
There's the curbside's still in here, but there's one called large item drop off. Okay, so it's not the take it or leave it. Okay.
We will still make a note and check, just to make sure. If it jumped out, maybe it needs to.
Yeah, take it and leave it was removed. So we did that
You
one.
have a red line version there?
No, I just remembered, which, yeah, it's not safe.
So it is correct in there. It is, the large item drop off is still there. We just
Okay.
removed the take or leave it, which is.
That's a public works. So
Thanks, Jay.
But I got large crap.
Section D is land use and development.
Do we have?
Just one more question, like, this is, just to hammer home again, the inconsistencies that I see, like, so water services, and we're talking about all the stormwater drainage and the water supply and distribution management. I mean, so these ones have to be identified in the service level inventory because they're so technical, and they're just, what council is going to get rid of water services?
You can't, yeah.
You can't, no, I mean, and we're gonna stop the rain, so the stormwater won't. So, I mean, why, like, that's where I'm, like, why would we have that even in here?
It is a service that the community gets, and it's a big part of our budget.
Yeah, so I guess so, but I mean, that just shows you me in one, we can actually impact the service levels, but I'm not gonna look, I mean, we're compliance with standards prescribed within the storm sewer bylaw and compliance within, and the same with wastewater. And, I could see while clearing out hydrants and private hydrant inspection, I can understand maybe that being something that we would provide a service to from Public Works, but The rest of it, I mean, that's my conflict.
I think it's important to still document it though, to say that the service is being provided because residents are paying for it,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
The bylaw is
So I mean, we have any motions to change it.
No, we're not gonna be,
It's just there. It's what we do.
yeah. Okay,
One of the very few areas that were actually prescribed, one of the only few areas that were prescribed in the MGA to actually provide a municipality.
yeah,
So it would be a huge gap if we don't include it, right?
okay. I just like, that's just one
It's a good point, but
nuances that I had in here.
yeah, that's the one that, yeah, council cannot make a lot of changes, but it is a major service that we provide as municipality.
I mean, we can't even identify if we didn't want to have well, never mind. Okay. I'll let it go.
Okay.
Let it go.
Okay, you ready for next one, Don?
Yes, please. So land use development. So this is, as a municipality, we want to grow in a planned and responsible way. So these are all the services that we have related to land use and development. Any questions for clarification or any comments?
I guess my only comment would be like related to the customer services inquiries. I guess my question is how much is council adding to that workload, like allowing resident inquiries to go through us rather than kind of directing them to the department? Like is there a big impact with kind of our current process?
So we'll reach out to Adrian or Donnie for that because it's both engineering and planning and
Oh,
development.
yeah.
Adrian, Donnie?
I'm here. I don't know if Adrian want to speak to first, but what engineering deals with is the construction help desk inquiries that come to us. But they do field every call they get and then kind of triage it to each department who may have an answer to the question. But to answer your question, Councillor Jory, roughly we process about close to 2,000 calls per year through the construction help desk is the stats that I have from last year. So just to give you an idea, and a CI process that we use is on top of that. So engineering roughly gets about, I would say, average 100 CIs over the last 3 years. So,
okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Adrian?
I don't have my numbers in front of me right now for the number of calls that we do take in overall, but I would say that when we get to a formal request from council, or when council gets somehow pulled into an inquiry from the public, it multiplies the amount of time on the response by 2 or 3-fold at least. Just because of the additional scrutiny that goes into the responses and communication, et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Joly.
Do we compare our service levels to other municipalities with the lens of competitiveness?
We do, but we have to also remember we're one of the very few organizations
that has this
detail,
this level of detail.
They're actually coming to us to get the information, but for planning and development.
Licensed within 1 day.
Yeah, we did.
I'd like to make that half a day.
Don't worry.
You know what I'm saying? Like it would be nice to continually monitor the region so that we can always say that we are competitive. And then of course, hit those.
Exactly. Yeah, we did do a comparison and maybe Mike and Adrian can speak a little bit more to that. Was it last year that we did that benchmarking report? Adrian?
The competitiveness analysis?
Yeah, I think that's what the report was called, but we did do a bit of benchmarking,
2 years
right?
ago.
2 years ago? Okay.
Yeah, I guess just in general, when I go to regional planning director meetings, the directors are asking how they can do stuff in a level of service that St. Albert does.
How would you stop?
So, I mean, I don't know. We have some metrics for some things, and I think the administration prides itself on trying to provide, really responsive service. The competitiveness analysis didn't find that we were, I think in some ways it validated that we were ahead of a lot of our neighboring.
Oh yeah, I get that, Adrian. I just want to stay ahead, I guess is what I'm saying. So if as other municipalities start to try to emulate what St. Albert's doing. We need to just keep.
I think the one thing to note on that is we'll have to digitize more of our processes or automate more of our processes, which we're working on in some ways. Yeah.
You go to regional planning meetings, that's.
There's a group of regional planning directors that meet to discuss.
You go to, is that a
topics of
sleep country?
interest.
Or is that at the bar? You might want to do that one at the bar. They know that, that's cool.
Also, G10.3B is an economic development one on economic competitiveness.
Yeah.
Where we do benchmark. Okay. So that's one of Mike's services when we get to G.
Yeah, but it falls into Adrian's.
Totally. Yeah.
It's actually very impressive. One day for a DP.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Very good, yeah.
Yeah. Permits, yeah. Signage, 5 days. Yeah, it's all pretty good. And I have a feeling we're beating them more than.
And this is one example that we just need to communicate out a bit more, right?
Yeah.
What our performance is and how we compare.
Well, we heard a story on the bus tour. We got a certain business here because we offered that higher level of service through permitting, right?
For sure.
Shelley's got her hand up.
Oh, Shelley, go, or Councilor Romansky, go ahead, please.
I just have one question related to permits, and I mean, it's more of a business type permit, but I had a comment from a citizen that the permit to operate a business in the city of St. Albert is $683 versus $115 in Edmonton and $101 in Spruce Grove. So that doesn't appear to be competitive to me. So I was just wondering what type of license that is exactly.
Probably the tobacco.
Mike, could you answer that?
There's more here.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like it's an Edmonton-based company or a business that's based outside of St. Albert. I believe our fee for local businesses is a lot lower. Yeah.
So there's residential.
But other areas would charge the lower fee for businesses operating that aren't in their area as well, is the way it was explained to me. So.
Yeah, it's very common for municipalities to charge a lower rate for those businesses that are based within their boundaries within their municipality, and then charge a higher rate for those that are based outside. It's typically in the range of 2 to 3 times more. I know that we do a regional comparison every couple of years just to make sure that we are on par or we're competitive.
And apparently Stony Plain doesn't charge at all. So that was just his feedback. So we can leave it at that, I guess. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for that feedback or that question.
That's an interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, if you have those comparisons, that would be interesting to know.
Licensing fees.
Sure, that's something we can take back and provide later.
Okay, just to keep us moving, are there any others on land use and development? You're good? Okay, next up is movement of goods and people. So this is the services we use to provide safe and efficient transportation throughout the city. Questions or comments?
It'd be the Dean show.
No, I mean, we're looking at some of these coming back in relation to snow and ice control and street cleaning. We don't have any targets, Jay, around when we do street cleaning. It says routine sweeping of city roads, but all ulterior and collector boulevards are cleaned and swept in spring. But do we? I mean, obviously, some springs were earlier and some were later. Is that? I mean, are you starting? Because it's spring, right? I mean, that's kind of like when does something like that kick off?
Yeah, it's totally weather dependent, Councilor McKay. It's based on dryness, right? So we can't go into boulevards when they're wet. We have to wait for them to dry. Once we are sweeping on with the brush brooms on boulevards, if we get in there when it's too wet, actually tear it all apart. So typically we will start on St. Albert Trail as soon as it's all clear and dry. It's the first place to go dry out. So yeah, we don't have a service level based on timelines. It's more based on weather allowances. Because the other issue too is if we're continuing with snow, it's the same crews that move out of snow into street sweeping. So we need to maintain our snow teams while we're still dealing with that and the sanding, etc.
Why did we make the decision? I mean, and I don't mind it. I'm just curious as to what the history is why do we clean the downtown streets every Friday? Is it just as required as it says, or I didn't even know we did that? Farmers market? Oh, there you go. Don asked the question, answered the question. Okay. Okay. Do we charge the chamber for that?
That's a Jay question. Do we charge the chamber for street cleaning on the farmers market?
Yes, we do.
Good, perfect.
And garbage.
No, I was just wondering.
Councilor Romanski?
Just one question. I think it's related in traffic management, but the company that we outsource to have those, phony power boxes that are, speed traps. Do we still pay that company, that private company, to do that?
I think that may be Aaron question.
Yeah. We don't have it.
Aaron, are you on? There he is.
Yes. Yeah, so that's part of our photo enforcement contract. And yes, we do. It is still part of the current program.
Has it been one company for quite some time, or do you switch it up now and then?
The last time we did the tender on this was 2014, I believe. Okay. And then this company got an extension on their contract in 2019. So every time the contract's up for renewal, we'll review that and put it out for tender.
I'd like to see what profit we make in comparison at some point, but I'll ask for a request on that. So thank you.
Any other questions on movement of goods and people? All right.
Very good. Let's keep moving.
Next one is public safety. So there's lots encompassed in public safety as well as community development. So this is, fire and emergency services, but also transportation, building safety, and some of our licensing. So any questions? Councilor Romanski, do you have questions for this section? Okay.
Councilor Bernanski's hands up.
She just has it.
Question. I do have a question. It came to mind. Sorry, on the neighborhood traffic calming, I've had a lot of negative feedback from the citizens on the speed limit change and so on. So are we done with that? Are we following up on that or getting any more data from the public, or is it just a done deal at this point in time?
Donnie, you or your team?
Oh, there's Dean.
I got Dean a face up there. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Councilor Moransky. Right now, essentially, the public engagement is completed, but we are just going to be performing our network monitoring to look at motor vehicle collisions. We'll be taking speed and volume counts throughout the communities to monitor kind of the implications and the response by drivers to the speed limits. But right now, there's no further planned public engagement.
Okay, thank you then.
Any other questions? We're good? Okay.
All right. So the next one is on business and financial management. These are services that we provide to ensure that we're a high-functioning corporation and we provide the best services to the community. So it's asset management, communications, marketing, financial operations, et cetera. So there are a lot in this category that fall into our internal services, but all of these are community-facing. So if you have any questions on the ones that are on the slide here or in your inventory, we can take those questions.
Business and financial management, you're on, right?
Mm-hmm. G.
Yeah.
Here's the one.
Councilor Romanski?
I have one question with regard to property assessment. So in our focus right now in our strategic planning, I mean, we're trying to go for, smaller properties, tighter land use and such. But if we inflate the property values by doing that, won't that be detrimental to when, property assessments start climbing on properties that are overvalued by assessment? I think we could end up with a lot of disruption and everything.
The assessment is not part of the service, and that's based on pretty strict legislation from the province. We're not inflating the value of any houses in St. Albert.
I believe we do have Stephen online.
Yeah, if Stephen's here, that'd be great.
Stephen, can you comment on this question?
I just need some clarity, Councillor Bermansky. Your question regarding assessments because of the density, or which?
Right.
Well, assessments are based. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just saying if we're pushing density in certain areas, it's inflating the property values in other areas, and then the assessments will all be changing quite rapidly, will they not?
I don't know what she's saying.
Well, correct, the assessments would change generally with density, but certainly it's something we would certainly look at as a balance, because if you created high density everywhere, you could arguably say that property values would actually decrease, because we require those parks, we require single family dwellings. It's almost like a suite mix in an apartment building. You don't build all one story basement, or one bedroom apartments in a apartment building. You'd look at a mix, and certainly that's what planning and development does for our department, is create that mix within the city of St. Albert. So if you were to create all high density in a smaller area, it may work, but you would certainly be looking at something that could create a value detriment if you created it, let's say outside the downtown or something like that.
Yeah, that was my point in the detriment, but I'll request more information on that as well. So thank you.
Certainly.
Councillor Hughes.
Thanks. So the public art collection, we have a fairly extensive inventory of, I don't know if you call it retired public art or public art in storage. Is there any intention of what we're going to do with that, or are we just going to continue to increase the collection indefinitely? Or there's a lot that's currently in storage.
Turn that over to Elizabeth.
Yeah, I'll take that. We're currently working with ADAC to update the council policy, but also within that to develop an acquisition process, which will also include the de-accessioning of our artwork, recognizing that there is artwork that should not continue to be part of our collection and should not be stored, so that if it's not something that the community is getting value from, that we're not continuing to maintain that. And our goal is to have that ready for council by the end of the year.
So I know it's early, but I guess the question is, if you don't want it anymore, like let's say we go through it and we decide that some painting or something, is the intention going to be to sell it then, or do we know how we want to dispose of it? Because somebody else might still have value. It may not be suitable for city use.
So it depends on whether there's an existing contract with the artist. Pieces that were added post our public art policy, they include first right of refusal to the artist to have the work sold back to them at an identified value. After that, it identifies being offered to the community through either an auction or sale before being de-accessioned completely at no cost.
Are we thinking that, I guess it's early too, Elizabeth, so I'm not asking you to do a crystal ball, but there's a lot, I can't remember the exact number of pieces that we have currently that are not being used but are in storage. But are we thinking the stuff that we are going to keep, are we intending to put it back out, like have a plan to use it, or are we just going to keep it and store it? Because we know it's not that we definitely don't want it, but we don't have a place to use it, I guess that I just see it kind of as a loss to have so many pieces in storage, both for paying for it and then just acquiring it and then not using it. So that's kind of where I'm wondering, do we have an idea of what we want to do with the ones that we are not going to de-access?
So our goal is to have all of the pieces that are usable to be out in public and not to be storing any of the additional work. We have a few pieces where we have replications that are out so that we can maintain the integrity of the original artwork because they are in an outdoor location. We would continue to store those originals. But our goal, understanding that our public art collection is only of value to the residents if they can access our public art collection. So our visual art coordinator and our visual art associate are working on a plan to get it all out in the very near future.
Thank you for that. Any other questions on any of these business and financial management services?
I have one more, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
So hold on, it might be a one before. I'm looking at transit fixed. I'm just thinking the handy bus. So we are regionalizing local and the, somewhere I saw it. Anyway, I know it came back. There it goes.
Right there.
So I know I'm only a few letters ahead of behind, but the handy bus, is there any intention of regionalizing that as well? Or is it like that's a giant
let's jump in there.
Money subsidy? So are we intending still to just keep it, or is there discussions about whether or not that may also translate over to the regional component?
Councillor Hughes, yeah. So the region, handy bus as of right now, listed in UI was not defined to go over yet. But there's still discussions happening in the background of the NTSC currently on what is going to be the final structure of local and or handy bus. So it's not essentially to get around to a quick point. It's undefined as of right now.
Councillor Brockett, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, that's fine.
That captures it? Okay. Okay.
Any other questions, Councillor Hughes? Okay. Anybody here have any questions?
No, we're good.
All right. So moving on then, the last two, they're small, so they're on one slide, but corporate governance standards, as well as local and regional governance. We're looking for questions for clarification or thoughts and comments.
That's kind of business as usual, right?
I kind of have a question about council committees. So how does it work when, say, in the last 5 years, I think we've maybe doubled the number of council committees, like it's increased quite a bit. So how does that impact the service levels? I assume we haven't doubled the number of staff that are supporting those.
I'll turn out to David, I think.
Yeah.
We brought in Renee, I guess, yeah.
I don't know if David is online, but David?
We should put Cheryl on the spot.
It would, I mean, I can speak to it a little bit, like it would impact definitely resourcing that would be required to meet that increase in the service level. And unfortunately, David is not here to talk to current resourcing, but I don't know if Carrie or Diane, can you? I don't think that we have not added resources in legislative services in a really long time. I know that. So it's been
Renee came in.
Renee just
did on the policing.
On the policing committee, okay.
When the senior and youth and policing committee came on, there was some halftime positions and stuff, and that combined to be created one FTE in ledge services.
Okay.
That'd be the only one that would have been added to add that assistance. And that also goes back to Danielle and Elizabeth's staff who provide that community development expertise. They go to some of those meetings as well. So there is, as you keep adding, it is go on their existing staff plate.
And that position, I think it was about 2.5, if not even 3 years ago, right?
Before I started.
Yeah.
So 4 years ago.
Yeah.
We won't talk about the vacancies at that time then. Okay, thank you.
So there is impact on resources. So yes, if we add more, somebody needs to take on that extra work. And if we reduce it, then it helps with the workload as well.
I got one question.
Yeah.
When do we do our own census, or are we doing our own census?
So David is not here, but if you remember during COVID, when we were looking for cost savings, we kind of decided that we're not going to do our own. We will rely on federal.
Is there any advantages or disadvantages to our own census?
Not anymore because they got back the grant. The reason you used to do it every year is because you got X number of dollars per person. So each year you went up, your grant would increase.
The province is now not recognizing the municipal.
Okay. All we were doing is spending 150,000 a year and we weren't getting any in return.
So looking at, I mean, our own census. Okay.
So I just think a lot of municipalities are they disagree with the recent federal one and they're going to do their own, but to what end? Right?
Federal one is you.
I think it's tricky.
I don't know.
I don't think it's tricky when you come up to those RCMP numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You have 4,099 people.
Any other questions on this one? We're trying to move along, so you have a bit of a break between.
I just have one quick question. What is the administrative tribunal?
We couldn't hear that, Councillor Hughes.
What is an administrative tribunal? It just seems like a odd name for.
Dawn, can you provide more details? But this is those external committees that are legislative services that use, like, yes.
Yes, STAB.
Quasi judicial.
Yeah, the STAB is considered one and the Assessment Review Board is considered a tribunal.
When was the last time we had it? When was the last time we had
you.
it under assessment review board?
I don't know. It's a good question. Steve?
Have we ever had a hearing under the assessment review board?
Yeah.
Certainly, we have some each year.
Okay.
Assessment Review Board for residential properties, I think we had 6 hearings last year, which is actually quite low.
Any of them successful?
Well, depends on what you term success.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a very good point. Certainly, the majority of assessments were confirmed, but certainly every year there would be an assessment review board, which is quasi judicial, certainly, and it would review each assessment, and we lose some and we win some.
Okay.
We're good? Okay, let's keep moving. So I think that we're done with the review of the inventory. So we just wanted to talk a little bit about next steps and provide council an opportunity to give us some more comments related to the process for this year. So, I'll cover this one first. So we usually bring inventory back to council in May for your approval, and we use that approval to trigger the annual process to pull proposed budget together. So hopefully by having this session today, we were able to answer most of your questions. We will take your feedback where we can make adjustments. We will, so we had some clarifying question or perhaps some consistency. So we'll look at that again. So hopefully when we bring the inventory forward to council for your approval, it will be kind of smooth. We will use to pull together proposed budget. We will use it once we trigger the update of the PBB. So we do need service information for PBB. And we also want to take a look at how we share this information with residents. So a document that you received may be of interest to us as administration and even council, but this is not a level of detail that our residents may necessarily want to look into. So it's not our priority to get it done immediately, but we do want to look for a more kind of customer-friendly way for residents to find out what are the services that they receive and at what service level, because we do get those inquiries at times. So it is something that's going to be kind of work in progress, but we will get to it. And also we'll continue to facilitate conversations internally. So as we mentioned, the inventory can, it needs to be a document that keeps evolving. As we learn, as we use this practice, we gain new insights, and internally we continue to have those conversations. So you may see us updating this, and improving, continuously improving the structure as we move forward. But really the value is in having this so that we can facilitate those conversations internally, look for synergies, look for ways to streamline delivery of services to community. So those are kind of next steps for us. And then coming back, so we got a lot of good comments. So thank you very much for that. I will just bring back this slide to see if council would like to give us any comments related to potential I mentioned at the beginning. In 2020, we presented service level adjustments to council for your approval or not. And then in 21, we incorporated into budget. But before I open up,
I just double checked. I just ran and double checked with David. on the municipal census. We're doing it every 5 years, so it fits between the federal. So it's in a couple of years, we will do a municipal one. Every 5 opposed to every.
Why do it?
No, I've seen it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Particularly if it's 100.
I think,
But is it a question for during budget or is it a question now? If you want to change the service level?
We could do it now.
Okay, that's what you're trying to avoid is a lot of these things being done at budget time, right?
Maybe.
so this would be even potentially a good IR because I know that some of the reasons why we like to do the municipal one is that we actually ask a lot more questions and a lot more focused questions than you get from the federal one, which helps for program planning.
Yeah.
And some of those things as well. So
I
speak to it in detail, but I know a lot of our
But
departments.
you know, your answer there, right there, Diane, I was about to say, well, we should do an IR. What's the benefit of doing a municipal census? Your answer right there is preventing. That's good enough.
The only thing I would like to know is cost.
Keep it as it
though.
is.
But I like to know what the cost.
100 and
Put 150.
So you budget.
every 5 years.
Yeah, because we basically what it is, it's 90,000 is what we pay Airdrie to for their program, and then it's our admin costs and other costs to do it.
Okay.
Are we keeping it as is, or is this the
I'm not changing it. so.
I would just, yeah, no, I mean, I can put it in as an IR.
IR?
Do you want that? Because
What? Not if that's going to be what your answer is going to be. So then I'm not going to have
it's a
administration.
good answer, Diane.
Totally, I've heard that through discussions. with
Okay,
directors.
all right.
It's essentially you ask different questions that you find valuable.
All right.
Okay,
Daria,
yes.
at the beginning of this, I think we talked about having maybe a week or two to send in comments afterwards, because this was a lot of information. We just kind of hit the high points. And is that still part of, we kind of didn't say that in the closing comments here. Is that still open? Do we
That's still open. So you can certainly send the inventory with your comments through Carrie to us, and we'll take a look. If there are small tweaks, small changes that you notice, we can incorporate those ones. But if there are bigger discussions, we can certainly flag it in the agenda report when we bring the inventory forward to council for your approval as something that, council as a whole should be aware of.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to make sure I still had time to
We still have time for that.
kind of blasted through a lot of that
So it's, yeah,
section G, which is pretty meaty.
pretty meaty one, yeah. Oh, certainly, and it's a lot of information, but, I would probably say in the next 2 weeks, because we do need time to read through this inventory one more time, incorporate anything that we get and get it through internal processes to bring it to council on time.
Okay.
So any other comments, process this year?
Yeah, well, I want to get a little bit into ask council their preferences more than anything. So at the beginning you asked, if you're trying to hit a specific tax rate % increase, which I hate, but it's the way we work. In past, you've given us a list of options and council then could pick which ones they thought they would like to see reduced and make a motion to reduce service levels. So that would essentially reduce taxes. If the city manager brings in a proposed 5%, then council has this pleasure and benefit of bringing it down to 3%, right? Or last year you had already incorporated them. You gave us a list of what they were, and then we were forced to make council motions to restore that service level, which increased the taxes. So those are the two choices that we've seen in the past. It gets political because when we could make motions to reduce, council, the Gazette says, here's the proposed budget, it's 5. At the end of the process, oh, it's only 3. Look at how great council is. Reverse if we actually raise it from what is proposed from staff. And I don't like that. That two different teams approach to taxes. So my preference would be for Carrie to say to us, you're going to get the budget in a couple of weeks. These are the ones we want to incorporate. How do you feel? And then we sort of have that conversation before the budget's even, released to the public. And because I know both those processes, I'm always quite surprised to see what you would recommend that we reduce or what you already did and went to. And it's gone both ways. I think last time we put a lot of money back in the budget, except for the lawn mowing.
wow.
So
Wow.
near the end of this, I don't, if given the choice between A and B, I would prefer them already incorporated. And then we would have to be, because that's actually politically harder to raise the budget, but it's also easy.
But you're also
giving something back to the residents. That's true. But why can't we have this conversation together before it's in the budget?
So this year, what we'll do is late May, we're going to be bringing a report to council on all the impacts on the 22 budget because of supply chain and everything else.
Okay.
So at that time, we also have that discussion about ranges. And then what we can do then is once we kind of start working through that and we have our kind of model kind of set up, our process set up and what may or may not be impacted, we can come back and have a discussion with council probably in the fall, like September, October, prior to it coming, because we need time to be able to react if you guys totally don't like.
Well, it's even less time if we do it at budget.
Yeah.
Right.
So
that's what I'm trying to avoid. So when do you sort of start taking those service levels and say, ooh, what?
Over the summer is when we start working, like we start actually whittling this down. We start having the conversation around April, May. So that's why May is a good time to bring this all together. And then over the summer is when we start doing the work. And then probably September would be able to probably come with some level of understanding of where we'd be.
Or even one-offs as they come. Carrie, it's for any council dialogue, you can say, you know, Jay had this great idea to reduce the service level. We think the residents won't even see it. You know, just even as they come, right? I don't know. Wes?
I was going to say that during our strategic planning, we talked about socializing the budget options a whole lot earlier. I'm just wondering if when you start to develop that, the scenario that the city is facing in terms of the impacts of the supply chain and inflation and all those things, if that's not the time to start socializing that with our community so that they can understand, and then we can also weigh in and hear what they're saying about this. If they're saying, holy crap, you know, it's going to be this, and we can't handle that, it would be much more preferred to hear that in June before you even start building your budget, rather than asking them after the budget's already been presented.
They will, because it's going to be a public report in May, they'll get it in May.
But, okay, but there's no feedback mechanism for them short of somehow doing a budget presentation to the public and asking for their feedback. I'd rather have that happen in May and June rather than after the budget's already been put together.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Let us work with our internal teams and come up with something to look at that feedback loop.
I think the interesting position that we're in now, Mayor Heron, like you had said, you know, if somebody has a good idea for, you know, a service that'll change that nobody's really going to notice. I feel like those are the ones we brought forward the last couple of years, like the kind of ones that were, you know, kind of non-contentious, you know, we didn't think they'd have it like, so I think there might be a few others, but I think those are the ones that we've kind of brought to council already, right? So, you know, if we're talking, you know, I mean, we had presented, you know, we could be looking between 5% and 7% over the last couple of years, right? So if council's, you know, kind of directive is 3%, and so that's a $4 million change to the budget, right? Like we're talking some significant services when you start talking $4 million, right? The ones that we did put through were pretty much nickel and dime ones, to be honest with you, right? So like if you're looking in that $3 or $4 million range to get taxed, it's a lot. Those are hard decisions to make for sure.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is we need to do it together. I mean, we don't have the expertise, but I don't want a motion, a budget that says lower this by 1% and then with no direction.
No, just
random. Yeah, so we need to do this. I mean, obviously I don't have the ins and outs of it all, but it's too difficult to do 2 days before we're supposed to approve the budget. Right, it needs to be done in May.
We'll build out we'll build out a bit of a process.
Okay.
In terms of timing and stuff of looping, of making council aware, working with their teams, making the public aware, and through finance and strat services and communications of how that would look for this year. It might be a little rough this year, but as we do it, it'll get better.
And there's probably opportunities for even different ways of doing the same service, whether you're mowing grass or getting goats in to chew the grass, like something like I was actually saying technological advancements and then I'm running goats. That was a bad example.
That's a really good example.
Kind of goats, so they could be, but, you know, so sometimes artificial intelligence, is there a way to keep the service level, but a different, cheaper way, right? And I'll make a motion for goats.
Robot goats, robot
Sheep or
goats.
goats they have in Fort Saskatchewan. And we could have-
I messaged Louise about that. She has good news on that front.
They eat black rot?
Giraffes.
Yeah.
We need giraffes.
We need giraffes.
They will eat
Then you
anything.
could have a cute community contest for all the kids in the schools to name all the goats.
Name your snowplow.
Do we have any, sorry, just
Please.
break before your next?
We got council.
If there are any additional questions from council members online? Okay, so just to wrap up and again, give you that break before your next meeting. So any comments that you have as, you know, you were reviewing the inventory, please send them to us through Carrie. And, you know, you expect to see this inventory back in front of council in May. And we, as Carrie said, we will spend some time internally to see how we can implement slightly different process this year so that we can have more collaborative approach to identifying those service level adjustments in time for proposed budget this year. So thank you very much. Hopefully this was useful. If you're going to provide any comments so we can make sure we continue to deliver value, that would be appreciated. But that's all we got for you today.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, everybody, including our directors and managers online. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.